Well, good morning or good afternoon or top of the hour to you. Well, no, it would be bottom of the hour to you or middle of the hour to you, depending on when you're listening or watching or what part of the world you're tuning in from. So I hope y'all had a great Mother's Day weekend. I hope everything is going fantastic. Welcome. I'm Joshua Shaffron, and this is the show all about accessing your BYSS superpowers, which stands for your because you said so superpowers. In other words, how to be able to boldly mold your unprecedented bigger future so that you can live the life that you choose to live according to your vision, your values, your ideals and what you stand for in the world so that you can make an impact and the contribution that you want to make, as well as achieve financial success at the same time. So what we're all about is empowering that and having the tools to do that. Now, over the past few weeks, we've been discussing in our various three-part web workshop stacks that we've been doing every week, where we've been digging into one subject that's overall a part of the bigger subject. And in our last three sessions, we finished up the Discovery Zone stuff. And then we teased about moving into the Living It stuff. So let me bop on over, and we'll go over to the what am I trying to say? We'll go on over to the iPad / whiteboard that we're going to be working on here, and we're going to go through well, we've already gone through the discovery experience. Now we're going to start going into the living experience, because it's all about bridging the gap. Just because you can learn something or know something. See, the whole purpose of what we're doing here is not to make you smarter, not to make you a better, smarter, more intellectual. We're designed so that you can actually see the results. We want to be able to have you put this into life, into experientially, and how to bridge the gap, learn and do simultaneously. And so the three subjects that we're going to be covering in depth this week that make up the living it side of the equation, which is this over here, is what we call the difference between knowing what to do or believing that you knowing what to do. In other words, learning what to do and actually being able to successfully bridge that gap and put it into action yourself. Now, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about the specifics of bridging the gap, but you're going to need to bridge the gap between two different sides of the equation. And chances are real good that you've only been working on one side of the equation in terms of bridging the gap. And I would venture to say that you've actually achieved far more than you think you have on any subject in terms of reaching for the success that you're reaching for, whatever that may look like. Now, of course, we're using the teaching model of building a successful secondary income from the online type business world here. And so what we're going to talk about now is what it takes, what the anticipation should be like in terms of bridging the gap. And today we're going to talk about the zero factor. And we'll be diving into that in depth. But you basically have to bridge the gap from two sides of the equation. And like I said, you're probably only bridging it primarily from one side, because that's the obvious side. Now, what we're going to also do is in the part 2 and part 3, or workshop 2 and workshop 3 this week, we're going to dive into specific tools that you can use to put into action the various things that we're talking about, and to be able to begin to implement it and bridge that gap between learning and doing. Now, One of the workshops is going to be about bridging the gap from one side of the equation, which we're going to go into in depth so that you'll know both sides. But I'm going to give you a tool, a resource on how to stay on course to actually, fine tune it and reach the success that you want to reach over time so that it becomes a habit for you. Then the other one, the other tool, the other resource in the third workshop that we'll be going in depth on is, of course, the other side of the equation that you need to bridge the gap. And so between the two, you'll have a tool to be able to keep you on course and to be able to implement everything that we've been talking about in the previous sessions, in the previous weeks leading up to where we are right now. All right, so as you can see, and as you can probably guess, The Matrix is one of my favorite movies, the first Matrix. And I'm not talking about, red pill, blue pill, which of course is what everybody seems to fall into in the, when you're thinking about The Matrix, you think about like the red pill, blue pill, and that seems to be the famous quote. There's a lot of things in The Matrix that are very much in sync with what it takes to create the kind of success and my philosophy about living success and so on. So the thing that I love about this particular quote is that it really speaks to the heart of what we're going to be doing here. And it was from the movie, and it's Morpheus is talking to Neo, and he's saying, look, sooner or later that you're going to have to realize, just as I did, that there's a difference, a big difference, in fact, between knowing what to do or between learning what to do and being able to walk the path and walking the actual path of doing. Now, I've come to realize that knowing is like what I've redefined my definition of the word knowing, because I believe that anyway, the point that I want to draw the correlation to is that we are pursuing the clarity and we're pursuing the next technique or the understanding that's necessary to take us to the next level, and in fact, the learning, the understanding, all of that is great, but if you don't learn and do simultaneously, you're going to run into trouble, because when it comes time, we've talked about this now many a time, there's always a gap between where you are right now, what you're learning, and being able to successfully put that into action and be able to get the same results that somebody that's a master of it, that's an expert at it, is getting from those methods, from the ideas, from the implementation side of the equation. And just like anything, the learning curve that's involved, you have to be patient with yourself in the beginning, because if you're looking to boldly mold something unprecedented, to create a bigger future for yourself, from nothing, to be able to say, I'm going here, that this is the direction that I'm going down, well, then you've got to establish and be all right with the fact that if it's truly unprecedented, if it's truly something that you've never accomplished before, well then, let's face it, you in fact have to be aware of the journey. And you, in fact, have to be aware of what it is that we're working on. And you've got to be okay with the learning curves, because as you're experimenting, as you're going experientially, as you're learning and doing simultaneously, it's hard, it's difficult. And there are some things that can come up all the time. And if you get discouraged and think you should be able to do it perfectly, well, then you're getting hung up in the gap. And that's exactly in depth what today's workshop is all about. Okay? So this is the tools of how to live it in your actual experience, how to put everything that we've been discussing into implementation and continue your learning, because it's about bridging the gap between, always seeking, always pursuing endlessly that success, and then being able to catch up with it and achieve it and have it. That's what I mean by living it. So that's where we are. We're graduated on into the next stages so that you can learn and do simultaneously. Okay? So now let's see. Where am I? Oh, yes. All right. So it's all about bridging the gap. Okay? So if you're on this side of the equation and you want to bridge the gap, what we're talking about here is bridging the gap to your success, or bridging the gap in between where you are right now and what you are looking to accomplish that you haven't yet seen consistency in your life. So we're going to be able to not have to be worried about every single day about the barriers, not have to be worried about the breakthroughs and where we're at, not have to be focused in once we've established the legitimized, personalized, and capitalized steps in terms of the game plan. Now we're into the capitalized stages of the equation, but the way that I've designed this and the way that we're going to do this and the tools that we're providing you here in this week, when we're done with the 3 workshops this week, you will have the tools to be able to learn and do simultaneously in conjunction, and know that you've got the game plan to be able to start to implement it over time and see those results happen. Okay? So what we're really talking about here is bridging the gap. And let me change my pen color here. So that we can actually see this. And let's do maybe a lighter blue now. We're talking about discovery, right? And this is the living it side of the equation, or the doing side of the equation, the implementation. And in between here is where we've been struggling in life. Very likely, right? Right here is no man's land. Right here is the feeling of the oh my God, what do I do? This is the chaos. This is the where you can get discouraged and wind up turning back on the equation. And we've talked about over various points in time. We've talked about the compounding effect and taking that penny a day, double it every day for 30 days. And it actually, if you can keep in tune with the compounding effect, and if you can, that's clever. Look at that. Let's actually not worry about that. And so we can get rid of the doubling effect. So we're talking about like the problem with compounding is that it's easy to get discouraged early on. Right? Like if you wind up stopping that doubling process at day 3 or 4, where you're only making, day 1, you're making 1 penny. Day 2, you're making 2 pennies. Day 3, we're making 4 pennies, 8 pennies, etc. But, here's the thing that becomes kind of discouraging is that by the time, if you continue all that hard work, all that upfront work, if you continue that work until day, more than halfway through the process, day 16 or 17, you're still only working for like $1.68. I believe that's what the math works out to around that time frame. So it can become very discouraging because you say, well, this isn't working. And the reason is that you're not seeing the things behind the scenes that actually are working. Okay? And so what we get stuck in, what we start to create this, this is where the bright, shiny object syndrome can take over. This is where it's real easy to start slipping back into our Fred stories and start to feel our mood denigrate down to, like frustration, anger, whatever it is in that, general standpoint, all the way down to depression, apathy, and et cetera, whatever you might label those things to be. And so what winds up happening over time is that if we don't stick with it, we have to stick with the compounding in order for us to get to the other side where we're putting in less effort, but the compounding effect takes over. And, here's the thing, like you get to day 21, 22, somewhere around there, it's still, like now it's starting to pay off, but it's still only $1,000 or thereabouts. So you say to yourself, like by day 22, 23, like how in the world can day, from 23 to day 30, how can that turn into, if we keep on just the same kind of compounding effect, just that same doubling cube effect, how in the world is it going to pay off and get us to that 5 million standpoint at day 31? I believe that's day 30. And then like if you took it, if the particular month had 31 days in it, then it would be over $10 million at that standpoint when, so it's real easy to give up early on. And that's very simply because you're stuck in the gap and you're stuck right here in that gap, right? And that's where we can slip backwards. And the thing that you need to realize is that the learning curves are the compounding effect. It works the exact same way when you're trying to bridge the gap. If you'll recall, where you're way down at the bottom on something, like this right here, and some place that you've never been before is way up here. Well, that's the unprecedented success. If we relate back to where we were in the previous few weeks backwards, and we go back there, and you start to see, or you can go through the materials again and rewatch or re-listen again, to, if you need a refreshment. Hey, Troy, really appreciate it, man. Thank you very much for sharing this in your live event marketers group. And here's a plug out, a shout out to everybody out there in the world now. If you are a trainer and you have some great content, you should hook up with Troy and apply to become part of his group so that you can share your workshops, your training materials there when you do go live, because he has this curation of some of the best trainings on all the different subjects in the world, that he just makes sure that they're delivering top-notch value to the world. And so it's great if you're somebody like me that wants to help expand the messaging and get out in front of other people. And even if you don't yet have something that you are trying to get in front of, you should still check out his site, because it's a giant curation of live events that are excellent on all sorts of different topics, so that you can really start to tune in and discover some hidden experts out there. So anyway, that's my plug. And every time I see Troy that he happens to be sharing what I'm doing here, I love to give him a plug, because I'm very appreciative of what he's sharing for me and helping me get exposed to new people. But also I want to help return the favor and help expand his message, his reach across channels that he might not have access to prior to that. Anyway, all right, so back to the subject at hand. When you're bridging between the discovery zone over here and the living it, having those results, being able to see those results, the first time that you go through anything, you've got to learn to do it. You're going through the learning curve. And those learning curves are, in fact, compounding. It's the same thing. So, just take it as it were, like, if you're tempted to give up and you're saying, well, this isn't working, whatever the it is, whatever the subject matter is that you're looking to apply the frameworks that I've been giving you to, and you're saying, all right, that didn't work. Well, did it really not work, or have you just not given it enough time to mastery to get through that? And this is what I'm talking about in terms of that process. All right, so these are the two subjects that we're going to be dealing with. And it's about entering the mastery zone from both sides, okay? There's really two different sides that you want to move into and enter the mastery zone on both sides of the equation. Okay, and so this is today's breakdown, and it's something that I term the zero factor. And I want you to, if you're taking notes, I would highly suggest that you write this down, the zero factor. What's the zero factor? Well, the zero factor is very simply just, we know from basic grammar school math that anything multiplied by zero winds up with zero results, okay? And so it's about having the yin side and the yang side of the equation and entering it from both sides. And this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, that in fact, you've probably been really focused in here on this side of the equation. In other words, what I would call your outer game stuff, or the specialized knowledge that you need to master to get where you want to go. Okay, so that's the that's the techniques. That's the particular programs that you might have invested in to tell you, well, how do I get new subscribers, or how do I get Facebook ads to work for me? What are the tactical things that I need to do step by step? What's the strategic part of the specialized information that's necessary? What do I need to check off my list? And that's the simple stuff that is obvious. And the reason why I'm saying that you probably got this side of the equation up to a high number is because that's where you've probably been focused in on, right? And you are perhaps, when you see a new methodology or a new launch, or somebody that you value their opinion suggests a resource to you, then you jump on that resource and you consume it to whatever level that you can. And so to a varying degrees, I believe that you probably already have more than enough specialized training and information to have the success that you want to have in the online world. I believe that you probably already have enough information. If you recall back to our previous the three core things that were in the marketing plan, the web plan, and the technical plan, and then the traffic plan, you probably already have more than enough access to and more than enough gathering of that knowledge to be able to achieve it. What you are missing, if you're not yet being able to see the results that you want to see, and you're not yet living that experience, then it can only be that you haven't bridged the gap between where you are right now and being able to successfully implement those things and staying the course until you do. And so just kind of relating back to our zero factors here, right? In this case, the zero factors are, if this side falls to zero, then your results are zero. And if this side falls to zero, then your results. It doesn't matter how much you create over here. Let's say it's 1 million as a factor on this side, right? But if it's zero over here, then your results fall to zero. So what ends up coming out of the equation is still zero, right? Or the lack of success that you want to see because of this up here. Does that make sense? So when you multiply anything times zero, the results are in fact zero, right? Now, if we talk about like this, and I broke this down last week, and I talked about like everything can be summarized into 3 parts at a maximum of 3 parts if you break it down to the core fundamentals. And that's what I'm saying, like the zero factor applied last week. If any of the factors on the marketing or the web plan or your traffic plan ends up falling to zero, then when you multiply it out through the rest, it doesn't matter if you've got a million on the web plan and a million on the content marketing plan. If you've got a zero on the traffic plan, on the exposure plan, then you still have zero results. And all three of those are zero factors in their own right because it has that effect. Well, this is the overall side of the equation that's going to govern whether you can stay the course or not when you're going after something that is unprecedented for you, when you're taking that bold move and you're becoming a molder and you're getting into the groove where you're boldly molding an unprecedented situation that you haven't yet lived in your life yourself consistently. Well, then you're dealing with this side of the equation a whole bunch. So I just want you to understand that that's what's going on. So the journey through this on both sides is the same on both sides of the equation, right? And so what you're looking to create is, if you think about it in these standpoints, is that it's just going through the learning curve. So if you're learning something and it's tactical in nature and it's what I would call the outer game stuff, like, you know, the action journey, the checklist of things that you need to do, and you still went through this on any subject. We can break it down to learning to walk and, you know, crawl, walk, run. We can break it down in terms of the action steps of the building a successful business. Like there's certain things that you have to do, and then within those things, there's certain things that action journey to execute that you need to do. And on the other side of the equation, there's having the courage to go forward, being willing to take that first step and have the confidence, have the ability, the conviction that says, you know what, I'm okay not knowing what I don't know yet. I'm still going to move forward. I can have the courage to have to execute on some of those things, even though I don't yet fully understand it. See, that's the inner game side of the equation, right? And chances are that you've probably been working on both, because you can't really work on one in total isolation. I mean, there's no such thing as having total zero factor, because you're bouncing up and down. But if you're more often than not letting your Fred stories run you, in other words, if you don't get to the point where you can actually see Fred, and that he's jumping up and down and flattening your head, and and you're saying, I wish there was a way out of here. I wish that there wasn't a lid, on my jar, when in fact, just like you can see on the screen there, that the lid is wide open. And that's what we mean by the Fred stories, right? Like the Fred stories are the things that are running us that we don't recognize. If we don't recognize that those Fred stories are running us, then we need to do more work on the other side, the yin side of the equation, the inner game type stuff, the inside, the inspirational aspects of it. And that's why I've been talking about both here simultaneously. You'll notice that the barriers and the breakthroughs that we talked about several weeks back, the barrier of confusion and complexity and the clarity breakthrough, and the barrier of inertia and the confidence breakthrough, and the barrier of motivation and the inspiration breakthrough, right? The inspired action breakthrough. Those are all inner game things. And then then we talked about the outer game things, like the legitimized, personalized, capitalized stage of the equation, and what needs to happen in the specifics of that, the tactical actions. Well, we talked about the marketing plan, but all of that needs to work together. So you can start to see that I have been all along trying to help you see your Fred stories. But if you're still in the stage of the game where you're constantly in question, then you can be sure, because this side of the equation is your Fred stories. This side of the game is your Fred stories, okay? And it's all about bridging the gap, not on just being lopsided. It's about bridging the gap on both sides. Because here's the thing. Let's say, I use the example of, let me break this down here. This is, yeah, all right. So we talked about this equaling the zero factor and the results equaling zero. But now watch what happens. Let's pretend for a minute that your inner game could be at a factor of zero. It can't be, because the very fact that you're paying attention, the very fact that you're feeling inspired enough to tune in to start feeling better, is a reflection on your inner game, your empowerment, your courage, your conviction, your confidence building, your clarity gathering. You're gathering gravity towards your inner game stuff. It can't be a zero. But let's just say, just so for this illustration, that it is a zero, just so you can see what I'm trying to break down here. All right, and let's say, just hang on one second here while I choose a different pen color. Okay, so your results are zero. You're getting frustrated. You're starting to see over here, like you're working harder and harder on this side of the equation, and you're stacking more and more stuff up over here, and it becomes more and more discouraging the harder you work and the less results that you start to see, because maybe you start to see something temporarily and then it snaps back. Because why? Well, because over here your Fred stories start to take over, right? And so what ends up happening is that let's say you do have a factor of 1,000,000 on this side, that you've done the hard work, you've done the heavy lifting, you've gone through the learning curves on the marketing plans, on the web plans, on the traffic plans, and you've got all that stuff dialed in, at least intellectually, but you're not seeing the results. You're getting discouraged before you can get to day 23, where you start to see some real exciting results, and you're definitely quitting way before, and then you're starting all over at 1 penny a day type stuff when you start to, but you're then going back to this side of the equation, right? You're going through the learning curve on that side of the equation. Well, now watch this. If you make such an incremental, simple little, like 0.1%. So let's say that you improve and this side falls to 0.00 or 001 of a percent. And this side still stays at 1,000,000, right? Well, now all of a sudden, when you focus in here, you're getting much better and higher payoffs if you focus on this side of the equation, assuming, of course, that this side of the equation is maxed out or stronger already. Because what ends up happening is that now you multiply 0.001 by 1,000,000, and you get what? 10,000. A factor of 10,000 steps out the other side, right? Let's just say that my math is right, even if it isn't. So let's just say that that's what that equates to when you times 1,000,000 by 0.001. It may be, it's probably 1,000. But let's just say, all right, so let's call it whatever. Let's just say the factor ends up being 10,000. Now all of a sudden you make tiny little incremental gains, and you see multiplied amounts because you've got leverage happening from the work that you've done on this side. And so now you can start to balance it out, and you can start to see where your low-hanging fruit lives. So that's really what we're talking about here, is those things. All right, now let me just take a second here and erase some of this stuff so that we can break through some of this clutter here. All right, and so what we're looking to do, and again, in the next workshop, workshop number 2, I'm going to give you a tool to enter the mastery zone from this side, a resource to come into play and to bridge the gap from this side and enter the mastery zone from this side. And then in the third one, I'm going to give you a tool to help you keep on target, a resource that you can use to, on a regular basis, be able to bridge the gap simultaneously between both so that you can be happy and successful, happy and wealthy, fulfilled, etc. Okay? Now, let's talk about what that journey looks like. Let's talk about the journey through the both. All right? So, it's the same whether you're bridging into the mastery zone from this side or from this side. Both the same. Okay? So it's just the same process. And here's what I want to break down for you so that you can be aware of what you should be expecting in terms of the journey. When you're going through the learning curve and when you're attempting something that you've never successfully done before, in other words, you're going for something unprecedented in your world that hasn't ever existed on a sustained basis for you, then there's three major pieces of the puzzle. There's the incompetence zone, the conscious competence zone, and then the unconscious competence zone. Okay? And so what each one of these things are just the journey, and you've experienced this. Anytime you've gone through a learning curve on anything, learning to ride a bike, learning to read, write, learning to walk, talk, whatever, this is the journey to bridge through and to achieve mastery on any subject, right? What I mean by incompetence is that you're very much aware of all the stuff that you don't know that you're not good at. You're very aware that you're missing lots of information, and you're very aware that you're lacking the skills, lacking the capabilities, the abilities to implement that, right? So you're now feeling like crap, because you're like, I can't do this, and I suck at this. I haven't yet mastered what's necessary, right? And then that's when we're in learning mode, and we're very much, as you can see here, we're very much in open-mindedness because we're a sponge. We're trying to achieve the information. We're very much looking out for all the things that we don't know, that we're that we believe can help us do better, achieve better capabilities, improve our skill level at something so that we can successfully have that. As we continue through that, and as we go through the next thing, then we move into the conscious competence zone, which is the what I term the cocky mind, or I know that, yeah, I got that, like I got this. Because when you're in the conscious competency zone, you're seeing success, you're seeing results, and you're able to understand how you did it, but your mind is still in the doingness, right? Your mind is still in, okay, what are the things that I need to accomplish? What's my checklist? Okay, and you're always kind of reverting backwards to there. It's not yet in the mastery zone where you're unconsciously competent at it, where you can just do it. You can channel it. You don't have to think about, can I breathe? You don't have to think about, how do I walk? How do I talk? How do I ride this bike? You just do it. And so that you're back in that open-mindedness, and you're returned back to the beginner's mind. Okay? So those are the three steps of the entering the mastery zone from both sides. And whether you're in the whether you're entering it from this side, the inner game, the confidence, the inspiration that you need to master to get where you want to go from where you are right now to where it is that you say you're looking to get to, well, then you still have to be aware that you're going to feel, uneasy about things. You're going to feel like you're in the unknown. You're going to feel incompetent. You're going to feel like, this sucks, I suck, this, the whole thing, I'm no good at this, I'll never be any good at this, etc. And then if you stick through that, you're going to gain the tools and you'll enter conscious competence. And this is a big problem for a lot of people, the conscious competence zone here, because this is where you're tempted to say, okay, tell me something new. Teach me something that I didn't already know because this isn't working, or I already know that. In fact, I know it better than you do. But the question is, can you live it consistently? And if you're not living it consistently, then you're still in that conscious competence zone where you haven't yet made it to that expert level, to the mastery level of results, where it's unconsciously competent as an ability, as a skill, as that you just channel it, that you no longer have to give it any thought. Like you no longer have to give it thought to using your cues of your emotional fields to start to R&D your Fred stories. You no longer have to worry about, oh, is this, true or not, or etc. So those are the things that we are dealing with, and those are the type of journey that you have to go through. And now I just want to kind of break that down a little bit further, and let's talk about the 3 different phases of the process that, or the 4 different, there's different emotional feelings that are going to be going on. And where I talked about previously up here in the different, the potential stopping point and what's going to be going on, like the cocky mind and the open-mindedness over here. When you're in learning mode, you're still open-minded over here. When you're in learning mode, then you go into the cocky mind, like, I got this. I'm a pro at this, even though you're not actually a professional at it yet. But that's tempting point to stop, because when you get some results, then you want to sit back and you want to enjoy the fruits of your labor, which is understandable. But you need to know that that's not done yet until you bridge the gap. And so when we go into these things, there's actually 4 different emotional states of mind that you need to be aware of, so that you don't start all over on either side of the equation and want to give up and say, all right, on day on day 5 or day 12 or day 15, and then go back all over and start back because this stuff isn't working, and start back. These are the steps that I would like to give you so that you can tie into the journey, so that you can tie. Thanks, Max. Appreciate it, man. So that you can tie into and stay the course, so that you're not starting all over at tomorrow at day 0 again, and you have to get 1 penny and then start all at 2 pennies and 4 pennies, then 8, etc. And so each time that we're going through this is that we've got 4 different feelings. And think about this for just a second. Okay? Whenever you start something new, when you're in that discovery zone, right? It's exciting. It's fun. You get to have those breakthroughs. Every time you have the breakthrough on the other side of the breakdown, that feels good. It feels exciting, that discovery. So it feels good to be anticipating good things, to be anticipating the possibility of being even cautiously optimistic, even with lingering doubts, but to be feeling that in comparison to where you may have been before, that feels great. So that becomes exciting, right? So now you want to learn more, and you tie that feeling of excitement to what? to the fact that you learn something new, and so that you can become addicted if you're not careful to the next thing, because now I'm excited, right? And I don't want to go past that excitement because, I like being excited. So I want to constantly chase the next big idea that I can have a breakthrough around, or learn something new that is in discovery zone that I may not be able to implement, but at least I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling that excitement because I want my next hit of crack. All right. So let's now talk about that, because the next step of the process, when you move into when you move through the excitement, if you continue to execute, where you're going to wind up is right here in the feeling stupid phase, right? That's the, oh my God, like I suck. This doesn't, and that's when you start to become aware of just how much you don't know about this, or that you know it because, or that you can see it, that it's possible, but you haven't yet developed the abilities, the skills to be able to create what you want to create on a consistent basis. And so you're now in that zone, right? If we go back up here, you're now right here of the incompetence zone, where and that sucks. I feel stupid right here. And what you need to do to make that all right is give yourself permission to fail. Whenever you're feeling like you're stuck in the stupid zone, or this sucks, or I can't do this, or I'll never figure this out zone. And by the way, the only reason that you feel like the feeling stupid zone is because you see a possibility that you probably didn't see before, but you can't yet duplicate the results. If you didn't see it, if you couldn't reach beyond, if it was so far out of your grasp that it wasn't even a possibility for you, that you couldn't even see it as a possibility, then it wouldn't piss you off, because you wouldn't even know that you had that that gap to bridge. But because you do, now you're stuck here, and you have to. The only choice is to admit that this sucks and stay in this sucks zone, or revert back to the addiction of finding the next thing. But as soon as you get over that excitement, you still have to implement it so that you can start living it, right? So the permission to fail is critical. And here's what I mean by permission to fail. And that's the real critical pattern to overcoming this point right here, is in fact giving yourself permission to fail. And I would write this down. This is so important, because so often, what we wind up with is we wind up creating this space, or we wind up creating this idealized picture of what we think success should look like. And if we don't see it immediately, we deem ourselves a failure. Or if we can't perform it, or we are well aware that we can't yet perform it, then we stop, and we halt the learn and doing simultaneous process. And that's where we can get stuck going back and forth. However, and I'm just talking about this, the reason why I term this permission to fail is because I didn't become a millionaire for the first time until I was 32 years old. But I was literally pursuing that status of becoming a millionaire since age 5. Working hard at it too, like literally age 5, selling candy on the streets of New York and doing whatever I could to figure it out. I knew then that I wanted to be a millionaire, that having $1 million was important to be able to give me the freedom, because that was my high value. It still is my highest value, is having the freedom to go where I want to go. And in my head, I equated becoming a millionaire with that freedom. And so what I ended up doing is I tried to everything from that, and as I got into my teens and I was trying more aggressive things, and as I got into my early 20s, it was, the Think and Grow Rich, all of the late night infomercial programs, all of those things. But yet I didn't have any kind of real results coming out of it. And I certainly wasn't anywhere close to being a millionaire. And I didn't realize it until I gave myself permission to fail when I was just about 30 years old, going on 31 years old. In that game plan, I came up with this concept of permission to fail. And what I said is I'm going to complete on this, because I had all of these, I had literally banker boxes full of various business models and ideas and different things that I had tried, and they were at various points of completion. And I probably had several hundred of these different types of business models. Some of them were only, like 5% done. Some of them, 30%. Some of them as high as like 80 or 90% done, but none of them 100% implemented and creating. So what I did was, and it's really thanks to who was at the time my girlfriend, who is now my wife of 22 years. And she said, just pick one and, see it through to the end and implement it. And let's just see what happens. And so the way that I had to implement is I had to give myself permission, like my job was to execute my game plan, and whether it worked or it didn't work didn't matter. Whether it made any money at all didn't matter. I just had to execute it. I had to put it into action, and so that I could feel good about taking something 100% of the way through the journey. And I later turned that is what became permission to fail. And by doing that, within I think it took me about 4 weeks to make my first $3,000. Now I set the goal, once I did this, of only having $1,000 from my own business in a monthly basis from the online business. And this was way back in 98. I believe 97, 98, somewhere in there, in that general time frame. So, and I set the goal of having, once I had completed it and once I got it up and running, I celebrated that success. And now it was time to, I want to figure out how I can make $1,000. And that first month, I want to figure out how I can make $1,000 in a month. Well, I didn't make $1,000. I ended up making $3,000. But up until that point, what I would have tried to be doing is create something that was going to make me $1 million. It was going to make me a millionaire. And it wasn't possible, given that I didn't know how to get there. I hadn't yet developed the skills. I developed a lot of the information, and I had studied it. Intellectually, I probably knew everything that was necessary to know to create the $1 million. I just didn't yet know how to live it so that I could actually see those results in my life. Well, after taking this in bite-sized chunks and raising the bar a little bit past where it was, and I call this adding zeros to your thinking, but instead of adding, trying to add 7 zeros, which is would take us to the $1 million mark, is instead of trying to add 7 zeros, I just added 1 zero, then add another 0 to that existing 0, etc. And by taking this in bite-sized chunks, I was actually able to compound my results, because literally within 18 months, by the time I hit that 32nd birthday, I was not only a millionaire, but my income was over $20,000 a week in net profits coming in. So I had the net worth of $1 million from the things that I was doing, but I also had the cash flow of if you equate 20 grand a week out over 52 weeks, that's over $1 million a year. And so that happened, when I'm looking back on it now, it happened very, very fast over that 18-month period when I look back on it over that journey. But the only way that I got there was in incremental steps, right? And so that's what I mean by permission to fail. Why? Because it got me past the feeling stupid phase, and it got me solidly into the cocky, conscious competence. Like, I got this. I know now that I can do this, that I can repeat the results, and I got it. Now, the thing is that I started oscillating back and forth between the resolve phase and the cocky, I already know that, arrogance, that, I could, the reason why I say, like, I knew it better than everybody else teaching it is because that was me. Like, I could teach it better than anybody else. I could, I could explain it. I could, parrot back better and break it down in a different way than all the training programs that I had consumed. But I wasn't getting nearly the consistent results anymore. And so the point is that I did get to the point where I had to stick the phase. And that's why I was able to go over that 18-month period, because I got to unconscious competence, where I didn't have to think about what was wrong, where I didn't have to think about all the different things that were going on, where I didn't have to think about what was missing. I didn't have to think about where I was getting stuck, because I was always in that motion. And with what we're going to be breaking down to bridge the gap from the outer game side, from the tactical, from the specialized knowledge, so that you'll have a game plan to be able to tic-tac your way to success as it relates to your marketing plan, your website plan, and your traffic plan, right? Well, then we're also going to give you the tools in the third of our workshop stacks for this week. We're going to give you the tools to enter the mastery zone from the other side, and that's the success seesaw stuff. And then you'll have the tools to be able to start to live the results and get yourself to that resolve phase where you enter the mastery zone and you're no longer thinking about it. And now you don't have to, every time you get a higher multiplied, leveraged payoff that's exponential in nature, because you're no longer thinking about your head's no longer in the confidence building game, that your head's no longer in the specifics of those things, and you immediately have a new set point about what you're looking for and where you're trying to achieve. And so you can now stand on what was like a high reach that you couldn't, that was a stretch for you before, is now a commonplace that is automatic for you, that you're actually standing on it so that you can reach higher, so that you can see higher, so that you can expand into more. And that is the equivalent of bridging the gap between your discovery zone over here and your living it over here. So the permission to fail, the unconscious competence of the mastery zone, is, you're going to feel stupid when you're in that incompetence zone. You're going to feel stupid when you're in the conscious competence zone. If you have the tendency to say, I already knew that, I know, but then just know that you're in the conscious competence zone, assuming, of course, that you're not yet seeing the results. If you're living the results that you want to live, that was that stretch for you, then you've gone past the conscious competency zone, and now you're in the unconscious competency zone, where you're no longer intellectually engaged in it, you're exuding it, it's just automatic for you. You've reconditioned out your Fred stories. You've recognized, neutralized, and dissolved your Fred stories, and then replaced them with an empowering, from both sides, an empowering belief system, an empowering set of paradigm of stories that is taking you into the both sides of the equation. And that's the journey to bridge the gap between the living it and the discovery zone, so that you can go from wanting, from seeking, from that endless pursuit to finally having those results, so that you can enjoy what you're looking to enjoy, so that you can live the results that you want to live. And basically, what you're seeing here is that you have to start with this assumption that inside of you is this gorgeous sculpture, is this perfect work of art, and that it exists already. And your job through this journey is to just skip away and like tap off those, everything that isn't that beautiful, perfect sculpture that's within, and reveal it by just knocking it off. And what are the things that we're knocking off? Well, those are your Fred stories. Those are your, that feeling stupid stuff, that all of that. And that's what ends up getting revealed as a result. All right. So that's the first part of the equation. All right. And as we open up the Living It document here and we start to dig into it, well, you can see down here, that is what we're talking about here. All right. And this up here is the game plan that we're going to actually sum up everything at the end of this week with, which is a 15-week game plan to implement the entering the mastery zone and solving the zero factor problem from both your inner and your outer orientations, and entering the mastery zone on this side. And this over here is the tool that we'll be talking about in our second workshop, which is going to help you enter the mastery zone from this side, the outer game, and keep you on track as you start to execute the 15-week game plan accordingly that we'll again have. And then this tool down here is the seesaw, the success seesaw, the breakthrough seesaw. And that will be our third and final. And then, of course, I'll explain this. And then it's just a matter of staying the course on a weekly basis till it becomes conditioned into you. And we're going to have both sides of the equation. And not only that, you're going to have the tools to continue to optimize on both sides for building your successful online business, as well as the framework to continue to increase, simultaneously learn and do and implement, so that you can live those unprecedented, bigger future results that you're looking for, so that you can create that on your terms, according to your vision, your ideals that you say is important to you. And you get to do that without sacrificing your integrity, without having to sell your soul to the devil, of manipulation, of sacrificing that integrity, or settling for the status quo ever again. You get to make that meaningful difference that in your heart of heart that you were put here to make that meaningful difference. So I look forward to sharing with you in the second workshop the what's called the WMN compass, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. I hope you're starting to see how all of the things that we've been covering in the previous sessions over the last several weeks are starting to all pull together, so that you do have a framework, and more importantly, you are able to live and do, learn and do, so that you're experientially getting in the game boldly and molding the clay that you say is important to you, and be able to not have to settle for anything less than what it is that you say. Until next time, talk to you real soon. Thanks.